Hey third graders, welcome to Module 7, Lesson 2. Today's lesson is actually the exact same as yesterday's lesson. We're just going to add some more thinking about what we're doing when we solve word problems and maybe add a few more steps to your word problems so that they're a little bit more tricky than yesterday. So today you're still going to solve word problems in varied contexts or different situations using a letter to represent the unknown. Looking at this first problem here, it says Cassias and Javier's combined height is 267 centimeters tall. How much taller is Javier than Cassias if Cassias is 128 centimeters tall? So the first thing that you want to do besides go, oh my gosh, that's so many words, is you want to slow yourself down and just kind of think of this like you're reading a book. Like, what's going on in the story? Who are the characters? Okay, so I've got this person named Cassias and this person named Javier, so I can imagine who they are. And their combined height is 267 centimeters tall. So if they were to stand on each other's shoulders, they would be 267 centimeters tall. So then I'm imagining that they're not the same height because Cassias is 128 centimeters tall and it sounds like Javier is a different height than him. So now we need to figure out what the unknown is. So the only thing I don't know, because I know that Cassias is 128, but Javier, well, I don't know that. So that sounds like the unknown. So okay, so now that I've imagined this, now I have to think to myself, how can I draw something to represent what this problem wants me to do, wants me to figure out? So could I draw a tape diagram? Could I draw a picture, a number bond? What can I do to help me figure out what this problem wants me to figure out? So today I want to challenge you guys. I want you guys to think of two different ways, that's two different ways on how to draw a model to represent what this problem wants you to find out and show where the unknown is. So that's what I want you guys to do right now. Think of two different ways to represent this problem. Press pause and press play when you're done trying to draw those two different ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how you could have figured this out. So the first thing that I could have done was drawn a picture. And so if I imagine that Cassias and Javier are standing on each other's shoulders, they're like a little circus act. And I know from here to here, it would be 267 centimeters. And I know that Cassias, so if this is Cassias right here, he is 128 centimeters from here to here. So how much is his friend? So that would be the remainder of this height right here. And since that's the unknown, that's the question mark, instead of putting a question mark, I'm going to put a letter. So I'm going to put H for height. And you didn't have to use the same letter as me. It doesn't really matter which letter you use. And remember, it's better to use a cursive letter so that it looks different than your numbers. Okay, so that's one way that I could think about it. I could also think about it as a tape diagram. So I'm going to draw my tape diagram. So if this was the total amount of height that the boys had together, then I would know that Cassias had 128 centimeters and Javier has H because I don't know how tall he is. So that's another way to think about my unknown. So you guys should have drawn two different representations of the problem. I might not have drawn the one that you had done, so I'm curious to see on your homework tomorrow what you might have done for your picture instead. So, I guess the third one, you could have done a number bond. So you could have done, let's see, you could have done the total, which would have been 267 centimeters, 267. And you could have done 128 centimeters and then H centimeters over here. That would be another way to show the parts in the whole. So after you've gotten these drawn and you've drawn at least two, now it's time for you to think about your mathematical thinking. So I have a few questions for you to think about. The first is, how does your drawing represent the problem clearly? So that means, how does your drawing show the information in an easy to understand way? So this problem right here, honestly, I like my picture a lot and it helped me visualize what was going on in my problem, but it's not very clear because my information is kind of sloppy, and I don't know. So I like this because it helped me visualize, but honestly, personally, I love tape diagrams because all of my information is just like nice and neat, and I understand what that means. That works for me. Maybe that's not what works for you the best, but whatever you think works for you the best, how does that show how you represent the problem clearly? How's it easy to understand? And my drawing, it helps me decide what to do. That's your second question. So how does your drawing help you decide what to do? So that's our next step. So looking at the drawings, now I can think, well, what am I going to do to actually solve how tall Javier is? So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and press pause and press play. I don't want to ruin the answer for you. But if you've already solved it, I'm going to solve it right now. So when I look at this, I notice that this plus this equals this. So I could do 128 plus h equals 267. I could count up, and I could count up to 267, or I could do a fact family and I could think 267 minus 128 equals h. So now I'm going to work that out. So 267 minus 128. Okay, bottom bigger borrow. So I'm going to borrow from the tens. So 5 take away 2 is 3. 200s take away 100s is 100. So Javier is 139 centimeters. So now I need to write my answer. So h equals 139 centimeters. And then our final step, remember, is to write a sentence about our answer. So I'm going to say Javier is 139 centimeters tall. Okay, so when we're even looking at my equation here, for what I did for my equation, how do I know that it makes sense with my drawing? Well, I know that this plus this equals that, so that makes sense. And how do I know that I answered the problem? Well, I wrote it here. Javier is 139 centimeters tall. So I was able to see how tall Javier was, which is what the problem wanted me to do. All right, so today for your final problem, you guys are gonna be solving this. Kim's black kitten weighs 175 grams. Her gray kitten weighs 43 grams less than the black kitten. What is the total weight of the two kittens? All right, so this is a pretty tricky problem, so make sure to really visualize what's going on and make sure to draw the problem in two different ways. So you could draw a picture and a tape diagram, you could draw a number bond, or any other strategy that you've been using that makes sense to you. Then after you do that, you're going to write your equation, you're going to solve for the letter, and then I want you guys to think, how does your drawing represent your problem clearly? How did your drawing help you decide what to do? Why does your equation make sense with the problem? And how do you know that you answered the problem? So I want you guys to think about those after you've solved it. Okay, so do your best, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.